So what is the physical seat of food? What is the source of our emotions, our design making, our passions, our pains, and everything else? Well, it's the brain, and it's said to be the most complex mechanism in the known universe. You might expect, given all it is, and given all it does, that it will look very pretty, full of shimmering lights and glass tubs and mysterious colors. But in fact, it looks really kind of gross. It looks at the 3-day-old meatloaf. It's grey when you take it out of the head, and inside the head is bright red because of all the blood. In fact, it turns out very surprisingly that the source of our mental life, of our consciousness, is meat. In fact, you could eat it. People have eaten brains. I have had brain with cream sauce. Not human brain, mind you. But I have had brain with cream sauce. It's not bad. But it makes the puzzle all the more harder. How can this fleshy thing give rise to mental life? That's the question I want to explore in the lectures and the rest of the lectures. I want to do so by starting with the smallest relevant parts, different parts of neurons. Then explore how the neurons are connected together, how they are wired up, how they form different subparts of the brain like the hypothalamus and the frontal lobe. Finally, talking about the brain and the larger perspective, looking at the two halves of the brain, the left half and right half, and how they interact. Now, there is a lot of stuff in the brain, a lot of chemical stuff, a lot of different parts, but there the action is the part that does the thinking, the part that is the focus of most of our research, is the neurons. It's not an accident they call the study of the biological basis of food neuroscience because it all comes from the neurons. So you can see here pictures of neurons interacting together. Here's a diagram where it depicts a typical neuron. So what do you see in the dendrites? And dendrites receive signals from other neurons, either excitatory like pluses or inhibitory minuses. Then they get to the cell body, which sum up of these pluses and minuses. Then you reach a certain threshold, a certain amount of pluses, there is neural firing. Firing takes place through the axon, and the axon is much longer than the dendrites. In fact, for some motor neurons, it's very long indeed. There is axon running from your spinal cord all the way to your big toe. You could think of it as the relative sizes of things in terms of a basketball and a 40-mile garden hose. Surrounding the axon is what's called a myelin sheath. The myelin sheath is, you can think of it as insulation, as fatty scissor-like insulation on a wire. So the information comes through the dendrites and summed up in the cell body, and it's transmitted through the axon. So what neurons do is they sum up and transmit information, and we know that there is a lot of them. By some estimates, it's 100 billion. Oh, the estimates tend to be very different, very rude. But there's billions upon billions of neurons, and each connect to thousands, maybe tens of thousands of other neurons. So the fact that you have something of this degree of complexity, this degree of structure which there is no way to replicate in any machine. The numbers are just too big, is why people might describe the brain as the most complicated machine in the universe. At least this is fitting. It's made of meat maybe, which is kind of disappointing, but at least it shows its incredible internal structure. So neurons come in three flavors. There are sensory neurons, which take information from the environment, from the internal world. There are motor neurons, which go from the brain out to your motor control. So if you touch something hot and you feel the pain, that's sensory neurons. If you range your hand back of your research for something, that's motor neurons. Finally, there's interneurons, which connect different neurons without making contact with internal world, either through sensation or through motor action. Now, the main thing to think about for neurons and neuron firing is that it's all or nothing. It's like firing a gun or sneezing. Neurons either fire or they don't. Now you might think that's a little bit strange, particularly when you think about sensory neurons, because your experience seems to be a continuum. So you have sensory neurons in your eyes, and you can distinguish from a very dim light and very bright light. You have sensory neurons in your fingers, and you could distinguish between gently touching something versus being stable on the tip of your finger or something. But still the neurons are all or nothing. The way we get to this continuity of experience is that neurons can code for intensity in different ways. So one way is in terms of the number of neurons that fire. If X neurons corresponds to a mind experience, X times 10 neurons may correspond to an instance experience. Another factor is the impulse frequency of individual neurons. An individual neuron might denote an amount sensation by doing fire, 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 while it might denote an intense situation with fire, 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 fire. So you have neurons, and the neurons talk to each other. They talk to each other because axons and axon of one neuron will communicate with the dendrites of another neuron. A long time ago, people used to think that neurons were wired up together like a computer, but in fact neurons don't actually touch one together. There is a gap between the axon terminal of one neuron and the dendrite of another one. A very tiny gap, typically of like 1/10,000 of a meter wide. This gap is a synapse. Then one neuron fires, the axon releases neurotransmitters, whereas chemicals that shoot out of that gap, and affect dendrites and our neurons. As I said before, the effect of these neurotransmitters could be extreme, which is that they raise their energy, so they increase the likelihood of a neuron firing or inhibitor, so that they bring down the likelihood of a neuron firing. What's interesting is that different neurons shoot out different neurotransmitters. So they have different effects on our neurons that they made contact with. In fact, a lot of psychopharmacology both attempts to cure various psychological or physical diseases by giving medicines, or recreational psychopharmacology decided to increase pleasure of different forms, or sometimes help people work or help people focus. Works by fighting with the neurotransmitters, and these can be either antagonists. They lower down intensity of things by binding to the dendrites, making it hard to create more neurotransmitters, or they can increase the amount of neurotransmitters available in different ways agonists. So you're either pumping up the volume or turning down the volume. So you think about different drugs and their effects. There's Curer. Curer is a drug that's used by South American Indians. It's antagonists. It blocks motor neurons from affecting their muscle fibers. It keeps your motor neurons from working, and what it does is it paralyzes you and enlarges and does. It kills you because motor neurons also keep your heart beating. So shut that down and you die. There's alcohol. No, alcohol also has an inhibitory effect. You might think that's strange because when I drink alcohol, I get all excited and happy and goofy. But you have to keep this in mind here. The way alcohol works is it inhibits parts of your brain that does the inhibition. So you have part of your brain that says, don't say it to the other person. Keep your pants on, stop yelling, and alcohol basically inhibits that part of the brain, making you more exuberant. Then, over the course of things, in the course of drinking too much, it also inhibits other people of the brain. You so could pass out and fall on the floor, and in large enough others die. So both Curer and alcohol, in different ways, bring things down. Other drugs bring things up. So amphetamines, for instance, increase the amount of norepinephrine, which is another neurotransmitter that's responsible for general arousal, and this is how drugs like speed or cocaine work. Other drugs like Prozac or A-dopa influence neurotransmitters in ways that they increase, for instance, the supply of dopamine or serotonin, which can be relevant for users like Parkinson's, which seems to be related to too little dopamine, and depression, which is related to little serotonin. So these drugs work by influencing neurotransmitters, either by directly pumping in more neurotransmitters, or increasing their supply in different ways, or stopping them from having effects by binding to them, or sucking them up in different ways, but they work through their effects on neurotransmitters. So the more general idea is the way neurons lead to thinking is that they form clusters or networks. With clusters or networks are computation devices that do interesting things like recording spaces, or walking upright, or understanding a sentence, or doing math, or experiences great sadness, or falling in love, and so on. We now know that that's possible because we create computing machines that work in certain ways. That if you were up in computing machines in certain complicated ways, it can do mathematics, play chess, do flight simulation, and so on. So you may be interested in the projects of computational and neuroscience, which tries to ask the question how are neurons wired up to do interesting things, and uses our own success at computation theory as a model. Then sometimes takes the inference the other way around, which is you can see how people do it and then use this knowledge of how people do it to create computational systems that can do it as well. So how is the brain wired up? Well, you might imagine that it's wired up like a portable computer, like a laptop, like the sort of computer you're looking at now. In some regards it is, but there is a couple of reasons why it can be, and both of them have to do with how well the brain works. So first, the brain is highly resistant to damage. If you get a knife to the brain, if you get damage to the brain, it won't typically shut down the whole system. The information and capacity somehow described across neurons in such a way that makes them extremely resilient to damage. While in contrast, somebody could open up the back of your laptop, pull out a chip, and the whole thing is ruined. The whole thing will stop working. But the brain is wired up in a certain way, and that makes it highly resilient. The second thing is the brain is wired up in such a way that makes it work very fast. So computers can do millions of operations per second because they are purely electrical. But brain tissue is much slower and can spend the time to do many steps. So to put it a different way, if your brain was wired up like a computer, it would be so slow as to be entirely unusable. It has to be wired up in a way that's more efficient, that allows for the slowness of brain tissues and neurotransmitters, and can still compute things at a human level, which is often blindingly fast. Because of this, there has been a huge interest in massively parallel systems and complicated neural networks, which are wired up is the belief the brain does, and as such, we are helping computers to do things based on our understanding of the brain that they could never do before. The details of this is something we are going to talk about through the course. We are not actually going to end up explaining different parasites directly in terms of neurons, because we can't and because we want it to have a higher level explanation. So when I talk about how people learn language, or how do they regard things, we're not going to talk about neurons in particular. but we talk about different brain areas and how they work. Then the assumption is the bet is, although that everything we talk about in more functional ways can ultimately reduce down to large networks of neural system, and that in turn will ultimately reduce down to the specific behaviors of the specific neurons that we're looking at.